What does the perfect Green Bay Packers draft look like? Let's get into it on our last Monday show before the 2025 NFL Draft.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast to iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts. You will find Locked On Packers, the number one Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Today's episode brought to you by the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay tuned for the Armada Player of the Week later in the show. We had our full week of positional deep dives. And so we need to have landed somewhere. And on Friday, I told you, I believed the Green Bay Packers were going to take, or at least plan A was to take a receiver in the first round. Now, I believe in 2020, plan A was to take a receiver in the first round. I believe 2022, the receiver was plan A, or at least with one of those first round picks, that they planned to take a receiver in the first round. They did not expect Quay Walker and Devontae Wyatt to each be there, or to both be there, I guess in this case, because I think Christian Watson was going to be a first round pick in 2022. Had that not happened, that would have been a better use of resources, but more on that a different time. So we spent the offseason having this discussion about the position that impacts the Packers the most over the life of the rookie deal. And I have to say, very persuaded by what Trevor Sikkema had to say on the Friday show about, and we talked about this in various shapes and forms on the Monday show, I believe last week, when I said, look, this was a top 10 defense last year with mediocre cornerback play. This was a top 10 defense, a top 10 passing defense with a spotty individual pass rush. It was mostly pass rush by committee, by scheme. And this was a top 5 offense and top 5, top 10 passing offense, depending on what numbers you like to look at, with injuries and inconsistency at the receiver position, plus injuries and inconsistency from the quarterback position. So trying to figure out the position or the player, I thought about it more from the player. And I would say this is the first time that I've thought about it through that lens as I've tried to go through the Packers drafts. I am usually thinking position first. But in this case, the reason I am thinking player first is because there are 4 elite, for me, for my money, top 10 kind of positional players at need positions for the Packers. Kelvin Banks, the tackle from Texas. Mykel Williams, the pass rusher from Georgia. Teteroa McMillan, the receiver from Arizona. And Will Johnson, the cornerback from Michigan. Now, Will Johnson ran, we think, high 4.5s. That was the training number, that was reported high 4.5s, which probably means low 4.6s. There is a better chance than ever that guy is there at 23. And frankly, I think for the Packers, in the system that Jeff Hafley plays, he makes sense. Does he make sense more than Mykel Williams, a 20-year-old from Georgia who showed up at the best defense in the SEC and was getting not just snaps, but making an impact as an 18-year-old? Has he maximized his physical potential? No, he has not. But he's 20. Then there's Kelvin Banks. I would understand it if they took Kelvin Banks. He's a very good player. I would like it. I would be like, that's a good pick because likely all these other players are off the board. I think he can play tackle Maybe he's a guard, but I think he's a really good player. I would get it. I would like it. I would understand it, but I don't think it's optimal. That leaves, to me, T-Mac. Ideally, Tetairoa McMillan is there at 23, and you take him. Had a visit with the Packers last week. There's been a lot of smoke there, public and private, that I have heard. Brian Gutekunst being the only general manager at his private workout, and then bringing him back for another interview. He is the guy, to me, in this draft, not position, the guy, where I wrote about this today for the Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. I kind of don't care about the rest of the draft if they find a way to get Tetairoa McMillan. I think he's that kind of player. And I think he's that kind of difference maker for the Green Bay Packers. They can ham and egg the defense together. They can get more out of Rashawn Gary. They can get some development from Lucas Van Ness. They can get Kenny Clark on a rejuvenation season playing his more traditional nose tackle role. They can get a healthy Devontae Wyatt season. You add in Carl Brooks. They can make that work. And we saw last year, this safety room is so good and so effective at, even from single high looks, keeping a roof on everything, that you can live with Nate Hobbs and Keyshawn Nixon and Carrington Valentine as your core group of corners, with Javon Bullard in the slot. I think Javon Bullard is going to have a much better year two than he had year one. I think that's totally reasonable. And we saw in the Eagles game, the coverage consistently was good enough against Jalen Hurts and Dallas Goedert and AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. AJ Green. The coverage was good enough. Now, you could have used an impact pass rusher, but it's the best offensive line in the league. You kind of just have to live with not being able to pressure Jalen Hurts. I'm not sure Jalen Hurts' defensive line from last year could have pressured Jalen Hurts. We'll see. They're making the switch with Mekhi Becton out at right guard. We'll see what that looks like this year. But for the Packers, the guy who would have made the most difference out there, like if you just swap in 2025 Mykel Williams into that playoff game, I don't know that he changes the outcome. Now, if we're really going to be specific, I think if you put Kelvin Banks in that game and he's your backup offensive lineman, he can play left guard, you might win that game. But to me, what the Packers needed was that pass catching star, that guy to step forward and go, it's 3rd and 8, I got us. Now I understand Christian Watson tore his ACL. Jaden Reed gets hurt during the game. Romeo Doubs gets hurt during the game. That stuff is going to happen. And if it happens, even if you have a really good receiver, you're just SOL. Like, that's just the reality of the situation that you found yourself in a game like that. You have to find a way to win anyway. But T-Mac in that game, he doesn't let the ball get into his chest against Darius Slay. Maybe he gets slingshotted, but then he goes up and he gets it because that is what he does. He wins in those situations at an elite, and I mean elite level. He is that stick him on the backside, let him just go to work, body up a corner, bucket getter dude that this team needs. Do I think Mykel Williams could get there? Do I think he could be that sort of high-end pass rusher? His run defense is already so good. I think Mykel Williams' upside is that like Trayvon Walker kind of player. 10, maybe 12 sacks in a good season, but probably never Aiden Hutchinson, probably never Micah Parsons. Now, does he have the physical tools? He might. I really think he might, with the frame and the size and the strength and the use of the upper body power that he can generate. And that's still, I mean, Trayvon Walker, like, what is he? One of the 8, 10, 12 best pass rushers in the league, defensive ends, edge rushers, edge players. That's still a really, really good player. I think Tet McMillan could be like one of the 5 best receivers in the league. And for the Packers, whether it's at 23, now that's ideal. I think for the Packers, more realistically, to actually draft him, they probably need to get up to like 18. Seattle. Because if he makes it past Dallas at 12, and it sounds like the NFL is not as enamored with him as draft Twitter, as fans, me. I think T-Mac is incredible. Move up to 18. And, if you can give up, and I wrote about this for the Leap, if you can give up a little, and this is a draft where, it doesn't seem like the cost to trade up is going to be what it was historically. To get up from 23 to 18, it's going to cost you something like 40 Rich Hill trade value charts. That's like your third round pick. You'd be overpaying a little by giving up your third, but you're not getting there with just 124, but maybe you could. Remember the Packers moved up from 30 to 26 with just a fourth round pick. Or was it 2 fourth round picks? Either way, you're going to have to, I don't know that you're going to have to give up that full third, I guess is what I'm saying. So if you could get up with just 124, again, we're dealing with ideal situations. That would be ideal. But then where does the draft go? Then what do you do? How do you prioritize this? We'll talk about that next on Locked On Packers. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with a Fire TV Stick 4K device, no console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty, Black Ops 6, and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. Play high-quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of a console. Already have a console? A Fire TV Stick device is more affordable and easier to travel with, allowing you to take your or your kids' games wherever you plug in. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices including Fire TV Stick 4K, 2nd Gen, Fire TV 4K Stick 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. The Packers would still really like to get a pass rusher. And so at 54, they need to prioritize that. 54, TJ Sanders from South Carolina, Arif Hassan, who is kind of the originator of the consensus big board, has TJ Sanders right there. Now they also have Landon Jackson at 46. Jaden Higgins is sitting there at 47. JT Tuimoloau is there at 51. Another Packers type. Edge guy. To me, ideally, 54 is an edge player. Someone like Landon Jackson. If you think 46 is too far to go, then JTT from Ohio State at 54 would make sense. Now, I am not. Like, if I'm going to predict, I think that would make sense. They are looking, and I pointed this out, at day 2 defensive tackles. Tyleik Williams from Ohio State, TJ Sanders from South Carolina. Sanders is someone, and along with Landon Jackson, that I think is really, and Tyleik Williams would be the other guy that I think are really, really good players. I don't think JTT is the 51st player in this draft. I don't think he's the 54th player in this draft. So I can't say that ideally the Packers would be able to draft him at 54. I really like TJ Sanders. I think this value is really good. I think he is a likely potential pick. But the ideal to me is that Landon Jackson goes from 46 and makes it to 54. And the reason you go, well, with those measurables, there's no way. Well, in the first round, here are some of the trench defenders who could go. Abdul Carter, Mason Graham, Jalen Walker, Michael Williams, Mike Green, Shamar Stewart, Walter Nolan, James Pierce Jr., Kenneth Grant, Derek Harmon, Donovan Ezraku. Nick Scorton is ahead of Landon Jackson on the consensus board. Tyleik Williams is ahead of Landon Jackson on the consensus board. That's a dozen guys. Like, that's more than a third of the league investing in pass rush in the trenches before 54. And a lot of the teams that are picking before Green Bay will have drafted Abdul Carter or Mason Graham or Jalen Walker. So you're probably going to be in a good position at 54 to have someone like that. I think it's reasonable enough that if we're talking about ideals, this would be ideal. Now, I do think it's an interesting question. We had this discussion last week when we talked about defensive line and finding that pass rusher. Is there a better clump of players here on the edge? Like Princely Umamielen is there at 60 on the consensus board. I'd like him more as a third round player. So to me, I can't take you there. Jordan Birch, he's at 68 on the consensus board. I think he's more like a third round player. Now, Braden Swinson at 72, I would probably take him at 54 and feel good about it. I don't know that the Packers, with his lack of testing, if that fits, if that works for them. So if there's a defensive tackle there, I think that makes sense for the Packers. But to me, if I want an impact pass rusher, I think TJ Sanders can be a very good rotational, even potential like starter. Like, he can be a starter. But I don't know if he's ever going to affect the game the way that the best defensive tackles do in the NFL. Could he give you a game here and there where he just took over a game, or a key third down sack? He pulls a Carl Brooks on a field goal block, like that kind of impact on a game? Yes. But someone like Landon Jackson at 6'6", 260 with the movement skills that he has, the upside for him is like those first round players. It's like, we talked about Mykel Williams. I think there's similar upside. Again, you go back to that Alabama tape in 2023 when he was explosive, when he was dynamic, when he is chasing down Jalen Milroe, who's probably going to be a first round pick on Thursday night in Green Bay, Wisconsin, where I will be. The upside for the Packers is you're getting a player who could potentially be a 10-sack guy. There isn't another guy. Braden Swinson would be the other exception. But again, incomplete testing for him. And he doesn't have the size or the bona fide, I put a stamp on my draft profile, athletic ability. Now, had the Packers not gotten a receiver in the first, this is where you start having that discussion about Jaden Higgins. But for example, Field Yates had a note last week that he's hearing late first round buzz for Jaden Higgins. I wrote about a trade down scenario for the Packers in the Leap today as one of two ideal scenarios. I still very much feel like if you can't get T-Mac in any sort of reasonable world, then but then the ideal is to trade down, pick up extra draft capital, get your receiver, and then hope you can get an extra pick so that you could get an offensive lineman, a corner, and a pass rusher, or maybe multiple pass rushers on day 2. The one guy at 54 that I would really have my eyes set on, though, is Landon Jackson. Now, that creates a lot of opportunity at 87 for the Packers. And so I want to have that discussion. Let's talk about it next on Locked On Packers. The Armada Player of the Week is brought to you by our friends at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week, we're taking a look at our draft prospects to pick one guy that stands apart, the guy we believed showcased the strength and power needed to push the Packers forward as we head into next season. This week's Armada Clear-Cut Player of the Week. We've already done Ted McMillan. Let's do Landon Jackson. I don't think we've done. Almost 6'7", SEC. He is someone who can do the dirty work, heavy duty, rugged. It has the length, the power to conquer the road with capability and confidence. Dream big, go big. When it comes to the Nissan Armada, they say go forth and conquer, and that's exactly what I think Landon Jackson can do. It's clear that our player of the week is ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can in the all-new Nissan Armada or any of their outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Thanks for making Locked On Packers your first listen. For your second listen, find the Locked On NFL Mock Draft available now on Locked On NFL Draft. Go inside the Locked On War Room for all 32 picks in your ultimate 7-episode series, Locked On NFL Draft Mock Draft, available now on Locked On NFL Draft's YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. We are going to talk about our draft a little bit more tomorrow on the show. At 87, you get your impact pass rusher. You've got your impact receiver. Now that allows you to go a lot of different directions. To me, I'm waiting on center, but someone like Jared Wilson from Georgia is going to get some consideration here. If you got JT Sanders at 54, someone like Femi Oladejo at UCLA would be beautiful at 87. Beautiful. Mwah. Chef's kiss. Beautiful. When I look at this group of players, though, because I'm not worried about, is the receiver here going to be good enough? Jalen Royals, by the way, 71 on the big board. I would be very surprised if he makes it to 87. There is a group of offensive linemen expect to come off the board in this range. Now, the one that I like, Jonas Evanaya, is now he's in at that 55. And to me, for the Packers, I don't think that's a good use of resources. A potential likely future guard in the second round and not a high second like Elton Jenkins. And you're not really upgrading anything. It's more depth and a backup plan. I would rather go rounds 3 through 5 for something like that. And here we are with an opportunity to do that. Charles Grant from William & Mary. Tackle body. Played tackle. It is hard to know what is happening when you watch his tape. Because there are plays where he just looks outstanding. The athleticism pops. But he doesn't have an athletic profile. The level of competition is crazy. I think he could get J.C. Treadard. The Packers are going to have to make this decision on Elton Jenkins. We've talked about this before. Without seeing Elton Jenkins, they think he can be an all-pro center, but he's got to actually go do it. So, can he? Then there's Ozzie Trapilo from Boston College. Some people are going to say he's a guard. I think he can play tackle. Relative athletic score over 10. This, to me, this is your ideal at 87. I think he's like a top 40, top 50 kind of player. Reminds me, in my evaluation, of Zach Tom. Now, he's not quite the athlete that Zach Tom was. But I mean in terms of, okay, I see the vision here. I see the athleticism, the size, the length. But I see a player who's got to get some more sand in his pants. And that's true of Charles Grant too. He needs to anchor better. He needs to not give up his chest, which tall players can sometimes do. But to me, he is someone who I just think I like so much more than everyone else seems to. I know he's huge. He's 6'8". That's way bigger than the Packers generally like to do because then he's a tackle only. I kind of don't care because this is me. Maybe he's not a Packers type. Though they have had some big boys, big developmental tackles on the roster recently. This would be a little out of character. But in a league that is now going to a little bit more of a power run game, could he be someone that intrigues the Packers? Now, there's also Anthony Belton here from North Carolina State, who they had in for a workout. I think they are really looking more day 3 at these kinds of players. But this just happens to be where the value is to me. And I think the Packers would really benefit from taking one of these guys. So one of Charles Grant or Ozzie Trapilo. I don't know that they're ever going to take Ozzie Trapilo. Jonas Evanaya being here would really be great. If I was trying to do this based on gaming it out, then you take TJ Sanders at 54 and get someone like Oladejo here at 87. But that's not the game. If you get Tyrone McMillan in the first round, Landon Jackson in the second round, and then do whatever you take Cam Scatterbo at 87 for all I care. I kind of don't care. Like after that, it's whatever. You want to take a corner here too early, Darian Porter, Noah Williams. You want to do that? Great. And maybe that's the move. Maybe that's the move. Is you get a corner here. I don't know that the Packers think they need that as much. But it's hard to figure out what they're looking at here. There aren't a lot of corners on the consensus board here that I think Green Bay would draft is the problem. Jacob Parrish is 90 on the consensus board. He's teeny tiny. Quincy Riley is 97 on the consensus board. Some people think he's a safety. He's also undersized by the Packers standards. So you're now just trying to find something. Now Shamar Turner from Texas A&M, I could get down with that. Joshua Farmer from Florida State, I could get down with that. Penetrating 3 technique basically becomes your Devontae Wyatt replacement, and you just go big on pass rush on day 2, figure out corner and tackle on day 3. I'm cool with that. I think Noah Williams is a better pick. But I also understand that the consensus board, if you look at it over time, straying from consensus a bunch is problematic. You are unlikely to hit. Now, Darian Porter, 66. I just think you're stretching the bounds of the game a little bit too much. Now, Wyatt Millam was a name that Ross Uglum gave us. Tackle from West Virginia, probably a guard for the Packers. You can add him in this mix. I think they're going to be looking corner, tackle here, but most of the corners they brought in have been day 3 guys. We just don't have a good feel for round 3, what they're looking at. And maybe it is just going to be Anthony Belton, and that'll be that. Your guard of the future in the 3rd round. They did it in 2022. Maybe they'll do it again. I think it's going to be an offensive lineman. That would be my guess. I would take Noah Williams. But if we're trying to also game out what they think and what is valuable to this team, they need a starting guard next year. They don't need a starting corner necessarily. If Keyshawn Nixon and Nate Hobbs are going to be around and you have Javon Bullard, you probably need a long-term boundary corner starter. But you can also worry about that in free agency. You can buy those guys. They just did it with Nate Hobbs, and they could draft somebody next year. They could draft somebody on day 3. Plenty of opportunities here. Plus, if you add an impact pass rusher, that makes everybody better in that secondary as well. All right, back tomorrow. Last one before I head out to the promised land, to God's country for the 2025 NFL draft. I'm going to be stopping by some of the different meetups and stuff around town. Definitely going to the Acme Packing Company meetup on Friday, I believe it is. If there's a meetup you want to do, you want to see me at, you want to know about, let me know, hit me up, and we'll see if I can make it work. Follow me on all the social media, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on all the social medias as well. Subscribe if you haven't already. Rate, review the podcast if you haven't already. And go subscribe on YouTube. We will be live Thursday night after the draft. We will be live Friday night after the draft. And we will be live, I don't know if we'll be live Saturday. Yeah, we'll probably be live. What else do I have to do on a Saturday night? Nothing, obviously. So we'll definitely be live Thursday and Friday night. I'll TBD on Saturday night, and I'll let you know so you can stay locked on Packers.